Sri Lanka is dealing with its worst economic crisis since independence. Streets are going dark. Food and fuel is running out, and people are protesting on the streets. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is coming under growing pressure. His government is being blamed for the mishandling of the economy. For now, Sri Lanka has suspended all foreign debt payments. This is a last-ditch effort to preserve its foreign exchange reserves. A Sri Lankan delegation has kicked off talks with the International Monetary Fund. Colombo says the IMF will consider providing quick financial assistance to the nation. Meanwhile, Sri Lankans took to the streets of Colombo, slamming the economically failing government of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The streets of the national capital witnessed a sea of protesters who gathered around the old parliament building to voice their anger. Opposition party JVP began a massive public march 3 days back. The JVP protesters have now converged in Colombo's town hall. Sri Lanka police shot dead 1 man and wounded 24 others. This is the first killing of a protester in weeks of anti-government protests. Police used live ammunition against a group who were blocking a highway in Rambukkana. The protest was against acute oil shortages and high prices.
It's a very long battle, and I don't think the government seems like they're taking a backward step. So I think the people should continue this struggle, and hopefully the government will eventually give in, and hopefully there'll be elections. That's what I hope for.
But how did the situation get so bad? The root of this crisis lies in its economic mismanagement. Historically, Lankan governments have been weak at fiscal management, so economic mismanagement was rampant. President Gotabaya was more of the same. His tax cuts were ill-timed. His obsession with making Lankan agriculture 100% organic made things worse. The final nail in the coffin was the COVID-19 pandemic. Sri Lanka's tourism sector is its main source of earning. It accounts for over 10% of the nation's GDP. But the pandemic has heavily impacted the tourism sector. So what did the government do? The Rajapaksa government chose to wait instead of moving quickly and seeking help from the IMF. For months, opposition leaders and experts urged the government to act, but the Rajapaksa government held its ground. Even the president now says that the island nation should have gone to the IMF sooner.
I believe we should have gone to the IMF much earlier for a bailout. Not providing agrochemicals to farmers is also a mistake. We will now give fertilizer to our farmers once again. People are suffering because of the economic crisis, and I deeply regret it.
Currently, Sri Lanka is seeking over $3 billion to help import essentials and pay creditors. But to get any of that, the government must present a sustainable debt program. This is a standard requirement for aid from the so-called lender of last resort. IMF members can also access one-off emergency loans. But these also have a few conditions. The payout is capped at 50% of the state quota for a year. In Sri Lanka's case, that will be around only $395 million. The other option is a standby arrangement. It would mean that Sri Lanka would be eligible for a loan that is as much as 435% of its quota. So Sri Lanka could get over $3.4 billion, but this is contingent of the borrower agreeing to some conditions, including that of specific revenue and deficit targets. Currently, an IMF program typically mandates fiscal discipline from borrowers. So what Sri Lanka needs to look at is debt sustainability. The island nation needs to keep deficits in check. This means extending the maturity of existing debt and smaller interest payments. Authorities are also planning to negotiate with creditors. Well, our correspondent Dasuni Athauda is on the ground tracking the situation in Colombo. Take a look.
Protesters converged in their thousands opposite the town hall building here in Colombo as a multi-day protest which was organized by the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, which is one of Sri Lanka's main opposition parties, concluded here in Colombo this evening. Now, citizens from across Sri Lanka gathered here in Colombo in one voice, citing and demanding for the Rajapaksa-led government to simply step down for purely mismanaging the Sri Lankan economy and for letting it go into one of its worst economic crises since post-independence. Stay with WION World is One as we track Sri Lanka's economic crisis from ground. Reporting from Colombo, I'm Dasania Kauda.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.